Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. And if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do for a living.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Cash. I am from beautiful Austin, Texas. I have a business called Kinship Milk Tea based here in Austin.
Awesome. So how did you get the idea for your business?
Sure. Yeah. I think I was really fortunate in my 20s to be able to work abroad in a number of different countries, specifically Ireland and Thailand. So very tea-forward countries. I was working teaching English, and then I was in cycling tourism. So I had all of these wild adventures overseas. And when I was teaching English in Thailand specifically, I really fell in love with milk tea in a big way. And it became just a part of my daily ritual over there. I would stop at a 7-Eleven and just be completely in awe of all of the bottled milk teas that I saw on shelves, and I wanted to try every single one. And so when I came back eventually after working abroad for a number of years to Austin, I realized that I just couldn't find it in a very accessible format. I could either go to a boba tea shop around the corner, or I could try to make it myself. So I started making it myself. This was the wild part about this is this was never supposed to be a business. And it just kind of honestly snowballed. So I got really obsessive over it, started asking friends and family to try it whenever they would come over. My friends started taking it to work. Their coworkers were reaching out, asking to buy it. And I had this kind of oh shit moment of like, okay, this is actually not for sale. This is a hobby. I need to figure out if I'm either going to take it further and go for it or pull back. And I decided to go for it. And we're almost 3 years in now.
Awesome. So I guess like it's one thing to have the idea and want to go for it, but like, what did it actually look like to go and commercialize this product?
Oh my gosh. There's not enough time, but I'll try to keep it brief here. Yeah, I think the biggest learning as a new entrepreneur is that there's no rule book for anything. There are no guidelines. There's no one laying anything out for you. It is such a period of trial and error and Googling things and asking people. It's a wild, wild process to start a business. I think even, especially in food and beverage, just the permits and the licenses you need from the health department, for example, that's one entire piece that is such a heavy lift to get right, because you're dealing with people's safety as a consumer. So it's incredibly important. But yeah, there's no rule book. So when I started, I reached out to probably 15 different people in the food and beverage industry here in Austin that had businesses that I admired and respected. And I asked if I could take each of them to coffee. And not a single person turned me down, which kind of goes to show just how collaborative and supportive the industry and the environment is. And I asked them a ton of questions, and I just picked their brains, and I took a notebook and I wrote a bunch of things down, and I was like, okay, tell me what your biggest challenge was. If you had to go back and do it again, would you do it differently? What were your biggest successes? And I learned a ton, and there were a lot of common threads throughout all of those conversations. And that's how I started. But there's no rhyme or reason to any of it, right? Like, this is for a lot of people, like, I don't come from a culinary background. So a lot of people, they're diving into a completely new industry and having to lead within that space. And that doesn't happen often. Like, when you start a job in the corporate world, you have training, you have protocols you're following, someone is guiding you step by step. And in this industry, it's a totally foreign concept that you're just figuring it all out in the moment, which is a really exciting and really challenging thing as well.
That's so true. So I guess like as of right now, are you mostly in retail or direct to consumer? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, great question. We have no direct to consumer. We are focused solely on retail channels. We are focused solely on Texas as well. So we're based in Austin. We produce and manufacture in Austin. So Austin is our biggest market, but we do sell in other Texas cities like Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Central Market. And we're looking to kind of expand our reach in coffee shops and food service this year in 2024. So if you have an office building that maybe serves beverages, like that's where we're really trying to go as well. But we don't do any direct to consumer. We're a refrigerated product. We're sustainable. So we're in glass bottles, and neither of those things are conducive to shipping.
Awesome. So I guess like for you, right, like you mentioned 2024 kind of focusing more on B2B, but are you also focused on expanding outside of Texas, or what does that look like?
That's a great question. I think this year the answer is no. We're not looking to expand outside of Texas. I think there is incredible opportunity here in our own backyard, and I want to go with the method of deeper as opposed to wider. So I think that there's a lot of accounts here that we haven't even tapped into, and really owning our own backyard and keeping that concept front of mind is really important for us as we grow sustainably.
That's awesome. So in terms of getting user adoption, I feel like it's always challenging with any beverage. So do you do like a lot of in-store demos for your business? Like how are you really getting this in front of customers and getting people to actually try your product?
Yeah, yeah. So we do a lot of in-store demos. We also do partner with a lot of smaller independent grocers that really support local makers. So they will post about us on their Instagram. I mean, I think as a business and as a person, I want to be really easy to work with for our partners. So what does that mean? Like we show up authentically as ourselves, we're kind, we give back. And that's really, really important. Like we can only be as good as our partners. So if we don't have that kind of mutually beneficial relationship of support, we're not going to be successful. So how can I support each of these independent grocers as well and their teams and make sure that they're happy and they're satisfied and they have what they need to be able to recommend the product to customers? And I think that's been really important for us. Like we are a small team, very, very scrappy,
Mhm.
very lean. And so we may not have the bandwidth to be in all of the stores doing demos and sampling all the time. So we really rely on our store teams to help spread the word for us. We've been super fortunate in that we have grown slowly and very intentionally with purpose. And I think when you do that and you're not trying to skyrocket out of the universe, you bring your customers along for the journey. So we're very transparent in our social media about how things are going. Like if I have a bad day, you're probably going to know about it on social media. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, why things are, challenging, et cetera. And I think that has built a really loyal customer base. So most of our success is honestly based on word of mouth as well, which is huge for us.
For sure. So in terms of supporting the stores, is it more just like going in there and doing demos and building kind of relationships with these small like independent grocers, or how have you actually, can you just kind of like dive deeper into how you've actually gone about and supported these local stores?
Yeah, sure. So one of the best examples I can think of is last February, we did a series called Love Letters to Austin. And we went to all of our local independent grocers and we asked to interview either the owner or the manager, whomever our contact was there. And we took a Polaroid camera and we took photos of everyone and we did these mini series interviews and then posted them throughout the month of February on our stories. These customers go into these independent grocery stores all the time and they may not know who the owner is behind that or who the team is behind that, even though they really love the store. And we thought it was really important to kind of highlight these people that we work with so closely and that support us on a regular basis. So that's an example of, an activation that we've done to help support stores. We try to, anytime a store has a charity event or something like that, we try to donate product, even though it may not make the most sense for us at our size right now. Like any way that we can support our stores, we really try, we try to do it. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think especially like, what you're doing, you're just thinking outside the box. Like most people don't think about going to that level and going into the stores and taking pictures and kind of sharing their, you could say, content and pushing people to go to the store. But that's really kind of where your customers are and they can understand, okay, this is the store, this is like the owner, this is where I can buy the product. And that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so fun. And my dad drives my deliveries. He retired a couple of years ago. We have a local distributor that we use for anywhere outside of Austin, but in Austin, it's typically my dad who's doing it. And he is such a character. He's very social. It gives him a nice outlet for for meeting people and talking to people one day a week when he drives our deliveries. And, he's very close with a lot of these store teams, which is a very cool thing. And he'll call me and be like, guess what? Callie just got engaged. And at first I was like, Dad, who are you talking about? Who's Callie? And he was like, oh, the manager at Tom's Market Burnett. She just got engaged. And she's from Mississippi. And he'll just kind of go off on these people. And it's so important because we are in the business, exactly as you said, of relationship building. We are only as strong as these partnerships. And so we want to support them, and we want to know about their personal lives and how they're doing as people, because it's not just a business. Like, there are people behind every single step of this, and we need to make that known and be real humans. We don't have to just be a business.
For sure, yeah. So in terms of your B2B player, there are certain businesses that you're targeting, or certain industries where you feel like your product could be a better fit for.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as I mentioned, food service is a big one for us. So what we're looking to do this year is become an option on coffee shop menus. So I've approached a number of coffee shops, and don't get me wrong, I love coffee. I'm a coffee drinker as well. I think that a lot of people, when they're working, especially now that we have such an insane workforce that's working remotely, they're at coffee shops a lot, and maybe they have a cup of coffee in the morning, but they want something else in the afternoon. And Kinship Milk Tea is an awesome option for an afternoon pick-me-up after a couple of cups of coffee. And so we want to sit next to all of the chai options on the menu, whereas that may be the only type of tea that people know going into a coffee shop is like, yeah, I'll have an iced chai or I'll have a dirty chai. And we want to provide a second option for you on the menu. So that's really big for us, is kind of larger format. They wouldn't be the single serve ready to drink bottles that we typically sell in grocery stores. It would be a larger format for coffee shops, lunch spots, restaurants, things like that they could pour over ice for a customer to take away. So that's a huge target for us, is more food service this year.
So like, when somebody goes into a store or like a restaurant and they see your product, how do you go about, you could say, like, educating somebody to make a decision, really just about what your product is? Because to your point, it is like a newer product here in the US. Many Americans aren't super familiar with this. So how do you do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. My dad, for a number of years, called it just milk. He's like, how's the milk going? I'm like, Dad, that's not that's not it, actually. So yeah, it's a great point. We had to really be very intentional when we launched in regards to how we were explaining the product and educating consumers. In the rest of the world, it's a very well-known concept. And so here, the iteration that we have is, first of all, it's a plant-based product. It's a vegan product. So a lot of milk teas are typically made with dairy. We use an oat milk instead to kind of widen the reach for people, so we can capture dairy drinkers and non-dairy drinkers as well. So we do use that. When I describe it, I kind of describe it as like the Goldilocks of milk tea. So we're not too creamy. We're not too sweet. We're just right. We're just really well balanced. It was important to me, living in Texas in a very hot climate, that we create a beverage that's refreshing and drinkable and very tea forward. So it's hot almost the entire year here in Texas. And so it was really, really important that we educate customers that this is a chilled drink. It's a refrigerated product. But even though it looks like the color of an iced latte, for example, almost the entire bottle is steeped tea. So it's actually the opposite ratio of a latte that you would get in a coffee shop, where it's just a little bit of espresso and the entire thing is filled with milk. We're the opposite of that. We have a splash of Oatly, and the whole thing is steeped tea. So I think making sure that the product is refreshing and drinkable is super important, and calling out the oat milk on the front. But it has taken definitely some education, and we're trying to figure out, as we move into food service, how do we maintain the brand identity? Like, for us, the physical iteration of the product, the glass bottle, it feels really premium in your hand. It's sustainable. People are starting to recognize the logo, which is really great, and they love the packaging. And so how do we translate that in food service if you don't see any of the packaging to know that we're the same thing when you go to the grocery store. And it's something that we haven't quite figured out, to be honest. We're going to test some different options and see which one works best.
Makes sense. So what would you say is like the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew before you started this business?
Ooh, wow. Everything is constantly in flux, I think. So when I first started, I was slow to make decisions. I needed everything to be perfect. And, as we launched with our labels, it was like, okay, I went through 1900 iterations of the label to make sure everything was placed correctly and everything was perfect. And we've changed our labels 5 or 6 times in the last 3 years as we have updated things based on customer feedback, or we've felt that something needed to be bigger or more prominent. And I didn't realize that when I started, how everything is constantly evolving and changing. And if you're stagnant and standing still, you're not going to succeed. And so I wish I would have known that starting off, just how every single day things are constantly changing and you have to adapt to that feedback that you're receiving.
Makes sense. So if we're going to have this conversation in 1 year from now, where do you see things going for your business?
Let's see, 1 year from now, hopefully we are starting to think about leaving Texas and going elsewhere. So we are tentatively scheduled to launch in the Austin and San Antonio Whole Foods markets in May of this year. So that's a key account that's coming on. We were incredibly fortunate to be a graduate of their local and emerging accelerator program this past fall, and are part of this just completely awe-inspiring group of founders. I still am uncertain as to why we're even in the room, to be honest. Sometimes, like, these founders are so driven, they're so kind, they just are building incredible companies, and I'm totally honored to be in the mix with them. So we're launching in Whole Foods in May, trying to nail that, making sure that we support them in every possible step. So that's a huge one for this year. So hopefully when I talk to you next year, we'll be looking at going outside of Texas. I think our packaging will probably be a little bit different this time next year, a little bit easier to transport, hopefully. And then we have someone else on the team to help out. I think, it's such an exciting thing to start building a team and thinking about what that looks like. Right now, we have a really small team in the kitchen who helps us produce. We have someone on the social media side who is wonderful and helps us with that. And my dad drives deliveries, like I said, and I do the bulk of all the rest of the work. So hopefully we'll have a little bit more help next year.
That's awesome. So if somebody watching this wanted to reach out to you, do you mind sharing your website or social media, I guess, best ways to get in contact?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is www.kinshipmilktea.com. You can reach out to us. There's a contact us page that you can reach out to us there, and we'll respond via email. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is the same, just at Kinship Milk Tea. We're very responsive. Again, we're a small team, so anything that you send over, I personally will read and respond to. So please reach out. We are all about building community, taking people along for the journey. And that's really, really important to us, is the community aspect of everything. Like, if we can provide a small spark of joy in your day because something is really delicious and refreshing, we're here for it. That's the goal.
So, Caitlin, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you. That was wonderful. Really great questions. Very,
Thanks.
very thoughtful questions.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Bye.
Thank you.